Thank you. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Finance and Governance Committee of Georges River Council. I declare the meeting open at 6:01 p.m. I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. I pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. I have an apology tonight from Councillor Green, and we have a late apology from Councillor Jamieson. Are there any other apologies? I think that's everyone anyway. So can I have a motion to accept that? Councillor Marnie, thank you, and seconded Councillor Symington. And we'll move that. Any objections? Declare that carried. There were no requests to attend the meeting tonight via audio visual link. And staff and public are reminded that the meeting is being recorded for minute taking purposes and is also being webcast live on Council's website, and this recording will be made available on Council's website. The Code of Meeting Practice, the order of business is as shown on the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open and doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed confidential session, according to section 15 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council, and mobile phones must be turned to silence during the meeting. Disclosures of interest. Councillors, does anyone have any to declare tonight? No? Okay, public participation. There are no registered speakers on the agenda tonight. So we'll move to the first item of business, which is the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. That is FIN 046-22, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting held on the 12th of September 2002. Councillors, can I have a mover? Councillor Symington and the Mayor, Nick Catras, Councillor Catras has seconded that. Councillors, any questions on the minutes? If not, we'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Declare that carried. Okay, so the first committee report tonight is FIN 047-22. That's the investment report as at the 31st of August 2002. Councillors, can I have a motion to move that report?
Which one is it? Sorry.
The investment report.
Yeah, could I just ask a question through the chair?
Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
To the director.
Thank you. Ms. Barker, I'm looking at page 10, which indicates at the end of August 2022, total cash investments were 214 million, which was an increase in 28 million. That's a lot of money. A lot of money in 1 month.
So that would have been at the end. It's the end of August. It's when the quarterly rates are due. So the first rates instalment is due on the 31st of August.
Oh, okay.
So that's when the majority of our cash comes through the door. So we will be in a higher period, and then you'll see through the year there's periods where it decreases in a month, as we do spend more than what's coming in. But end of August is when the annual rates is due in the first instalment, so it's the biggest amount of cash flow coming into council that we encounter.
Well, it did put a smile on my face.
It is a good thing. It's good that it's coming
It'll probably go down sooner or later, but anyway. And I think there was one more. No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm happy to, whoever's moved it, I'll second.
We haven't got a mover yet, so if someone would like to move,
I'll move
you'll move it. Thank you to the Mayor. And Councillor Marnie will second it. Thank you. Did you have another question?
No.
No other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, we will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, and we'll declare that carried. Next item is FIN 048-22, Delivery Program End of Year Progress Report from July 2021 to June 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, councillors?
Move that, Madam Chair.
Councillor Symington has moved that. Councillor Marnie? Yep, Councillor Marnie will second that. Thank you. Councillors, does anyone have any questions on the end of year progress report?
It may not be relevant to this committee, but on page 26, it's probably a development issue. It says implement an affordable rental housing policy. The project will need to be carried to the 2022-2023 as council deferred the Mortdale master plan. I presume that what they're talking about is the affordable rental housing policy across the whole of the LGA, and I'm hoping that includes Mortdale.
That is correct.
That's, the acting general manager has
That's
answered.
correct. So it's across the whole of LGA, and it will be uniform amongst all the.
I understand that was the decision that the council made.
Do you want to just put your microphone on? Sorry.
That my recommendation.
You go, because I don't know how to do that. Just in time for me to go on holidays. Yes, that's correct. The council has resolved to look at one across the whole LGA. We were going to, as part of the Mortdale Master Plan, consider how it might apply in that space, but they'll now move into our next financial year in terms of activities and subject to funding, of course.
Yeah, I do realise that it's probably not part of this this committee, but I did want to find out if I think the state government was marching forward with compulsory affordable housing schemes across the whole of New South Wales. Would that be? Do you have any?
I'm certainly aware that the Greater Sydney's Commission discussion paper on the new 6 cities model for the next Greater Metropolitan Plan does talk about targets for affordable housing. So it's likely to form part of some future requirement of council to deliver planning instruments that make set some limits or some minimum standards for the provision of affordable and social housing, probably both of those.
And I presume not in my backyard will not stand as an excuse not to have it.
I won't offer a response to that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Does any councillors have any other questions? Councillor Marnie?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If I can maybe get an idea of 141A1, prepare planning proposal, incorporate recommendations for Foreshore Scenic Character Review. Do we have a time frame on that?
We'll come back to you, Councillor Marnie, on a time frame for that, but we are going to commence the consultation, which was the outcome from the last briefing session with the councillors, was to commence consultation. Once we've completed that consultation, we might have a better idea of actual timing, but I will get the Director of Planning and Environment to respond directly to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors, on the delivery program end of year progress report? No? Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Simonton, seconded by Councillor Marnie. We'll put that. All those in favour say aye. All those against, we'll declare that carried. The next item is FIN 049-22. That's the new social media policy. Councillors, I have a couple of questions on this. Do we want to ask for a mover and seconder? Or?
I'll move, Madam Chair, for discussion.
Move for discussion, okay. And second that, Councillor Catras. Okay. Does any other councillors have any questions? Otherwise, I'll put some questions forward. No? Okay. I just have some questions in regards to some of the Section 4.3, item M. It says that you cannot advertise, endorse, or solicit commercial products or business. And so my question is around the definition of the word endorse. As a councillor, sometimes we might like to, have visited a new local restaurant or something like that. We might like to do a post on social media stating that we have been to that restaurant and it was a new restaurant and we want to support that business by saying, letting the community know that it was a new restaurant and people should check it out. And so I just wanted to ask a question around the definition of endorse, and is that type of communication from a councillor, would that be permissible under that section? So should to the acting Director of Finance, do you want to take that? Or to the
Madam
council?
Chair, that's a really good question because it is a grey area when you look at what endorse might look like. So if you're supporting a local business and there isn't a business conflict of interest for you, there isn't a pecuniary interest, then it would line up with similar issues with a code of conduct. So for example, you can say I'm visiting something, but if you're found to be a shareholder or if you're found to be related to that business, it then would be how it would reflect on you in your elected position. Are you using your status or your official role to promote? So I think that it would be, I'm going to call it the pub test when it comes to what it looks like, because if you see further down in that section 4, there is 4.5, council officials must exercise caution when sharing, liking, retweeting, as that can be regarded as endorsement. So it doesn't get any clearer than what they have here. So it would be what is reasonable. What is reasonable endorsement? So if you can be seen to be having anything other than a community interest in that commercial product or business, then it would be questionable and a code of conduct matter. But if your interest in mentioning them on your social media is community focused, then that would be reasonable.
And do you think the way it's worded it supports that view? Because it says council officials must not use social media to post or share comments, photos, videos, electronic recordings or other information that advertises, endorses or solicits commercial products or business. So I understand the point you're making, but I don't feel like that is the word solicit. Is that the word that is key in the fact that obviously if I'm doing it for paid return, then that would be conflict. I'd be against the code of conduct, but I don't feel that wording is really clear in terms of defining it to when you only have, as long as you don't have a conflict of interest.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll just refer that to the acting General Manager.
I think the Coordinator of Communications and Media is being fairly clear on as best we can, because this is the model and we have to adopt the words of the model. I think it's your assessment. I think Madam Chair is correct. It's really about, is there a financial gain specifically to you, which might be slightly indirect. You're promoting your brother's business. That would be seen to be doing something else other than for a community-minded thing, or if it's someone you work for or you've offered services to in the past, that might also be seen to be something that you're eliciting some sort of direct benefit for yourself out of, or benefit for that business. Whereas I would expect all councillors from time to time to want to be out there talking about their local community, and the local businesses that exist in our community are an important part. It could be a post saying you've been to the St George League game and it was fantastic, and go the Dragons. Support for the local football team, I'd have to say, was probably mandatory rather than an endorsement. So I think those things are okay. There may be some grey areas, but I think if people approach this, is there any personal benefit to me, my family, or a close contact, and it's really about promoting my local community, of which this business is one, I think councillors would be safe. But I'm just going to check with James. That's just the model provisions, isn't it? So we're not in a position to change it.
I think it's clear if we adopt the model, but I honestly think we could address this in our training and our induction steps as well, where we would make very clear line up with code of conduct for this matter, and we could put in our training examples of what might look like soliciting or endorsing something commercial versus community support, because I take your point that this is a hard area when you are out promoting the community. So we do need to put some clear examples into our training and induction on what might be right and what might be wrong. And if in doubt, have a support line available for councillors.
Or even if it must not advertise, endorse or solicit commercial products or business where they have a conflict of interest. Like that would be a bit more clearer to define that possibly. So maybe it's something that could be discussed. So I had another question, which was just around section 5. It seemed to me to be combining the responsibilities of council's social media platform and the social media coordinator of council and council. So they're all being treated under that one section. And it does say that in section 5.13, a councillor can block whoever they like. But then in section 5.17, it says that a member of the public can request a review in writing to the general manager if they're blocked. So how would that work if a councillor wants to block someone because they've been for whatever reasons, but then is the member of the public able to make an appeal to the general manager if they're blocked from a councillor's social media?
Madam Chair, I would suggest that would be another one that we would have in our procedures, where the general manager would notify a councillor in the event that they'd had a request for review, but generally this will be council social media platforms that this would adhere to. So somebody could still make an appeal based on being banned from a councillor's platform, and we would have a notification step to that councillor, but this is primarily council's platforms.
Thank you. Thanks. I just have two more questions. One was section 7.2, where it says if you publish something and then it is changed or deleted or things like that, then a screenshot needs to be taken and a record of it sent to council. I'm just questioning the practicalities of that, because often you update things for typos, or you might have put some inaccuracy that you want to correct and things like that. I'm just questioning the practicality around, is it realistic that a councillor would screenshot that and go, here you go, here's the one I first published and here's the second one I fixed up? It's just a question.
I think, Madam Chair, the challenges for the councillors is that when you're acting in your official capacity as a councillor, all your documents are covered by the State Records Act, which is your emails, text messages, all sorts of things which cannot just be destroyed. I don't think it would simply cover a case where you're correcting typo, or otherwise I'm in trouble. But it certainly would, it's to cover the case of deleting whole posts that may have been important record for another purpose. We can certainly get some further advice as part of the training around the State Records Act and how the State Records Act deals with those issues specifically, so we can give better guidance to councillors. And I think that would be the way to go on that, but we seek further guidance on that, because there is an issue about councillors' documents actually being covered by the State Records Act, which comes up from time to time in other political forums as well.
Thank you. And the last question I had was just section 7.3, that when you cease to be a councillor, you must transfer your social media content to council. And is that something that I don't know how to do it, so I wouldn't. How would that work?
Again, this is where we are here to assist the councillors, and we would provide advice and support to councillors to do so through our IMT team, our Information Management Technology team. We provide that assistance just as you hand over your technological devices, and we remove appropriate data from those as well at the appropriate time. So I'm sure it can be done, and it would be our job to support the councillors to make sure you meet those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
remembering, of course, this is only social media where you're posting as councillor of Georges River Council, not as Elise Ball, private citizen.
Yes, understand. Thank you. Thank you for answering the questions. Councillors, does anyone else have questions? Yeah, Councillor Symington.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Acting General Manager. I just wanted some clarification with the draft social media policy option 2, which came from OLG. So that's all of that's mandatory. You know, with the code of conduct, there's mandatory, there's optional. So everything in that is mandatory. That's what I just want.
I might just pass that to Ms. James. My recollection was that it was all mandatory. You can add additional bits, but you can't take anything away. But I'll just seek clarification.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. It is considered mandatory. We could add and we could make minor modifications, but they did ask that the model stayed true to how it's been sent out.
Okay, next, just one follow-up question. So council at this stage hasn't added anything. This is just the way that it's been provided from OLG.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, what we did add was we pulled out the responsibilities. So we added a section in the back that commences on page 15, which was a table of responsibilities to make it clearer so that nobody reading the policy had to find in separate locations what their individual responsibilities were. So we have a table of responsibilities that we added, and all of our recommended suggestions when it was in consultation mode were adopted by OLG. So we found that this came to us just really needing that responsibilities table to make it a clearer document to read. Well, I think we also added, from memory, our principles of openness, relevance, accuracy and respect.
Which page was that on? Sorry.
That's on page 4. We pulled that out into a table format
Okay.
to make it clearer.
Yeah, I see. Councillor Symington.
Yeah, just to management communications. We are going to have comprehensive training. I know we've mentioned training, but when I read it, I was like, we really will need training on this. So yeah.
I think we're acknowledging that, councillors. I think even the staff will need it. It's a bit like the code of conduct. When you think you know enough, you still don't know. But there are some basic principles here, which is about saying, yes, councillors can have a councillor website or Facebook page, but there are some rules around how you set that up and how you manage it going forward. And I think even when we first, through the induction process of the councillors early on, we did talk about the need for, when using social media, to follow some principles. Most of those principles, I think, are picked up in this model code, including the way in which you engage. You don't act in a way that puts disrespect on the council or the decisions of the council, or brings us into disrepute.
Can I just make a comment on that? Where we, I suppose, will need a lot of training is the fine line between expressing an opinion and representing the council's resolution. Now, I think what you've got to be careful of, and after what I've been told over a number of years, once the council makes a resolution, it's your job as a councillor to either support that resolution or just turn around and say, look, I have my own opinion on the matter, and I don't quite agree with what we do, but I have to support the council's resolution. Now that's, I think, something that really needs to be somewhat embedded in our brains when we're actually talking to the community. Because you can't just go off and say, and this is something that's very, very clear, you can't just go off and say that I do not agree with the council, or I think the council have been crazy in doing this, you actually have to say the council has resolved in this way, and I have a responsibility to support the resolution, but I have my own opinions on it, rather than come out battling like a wrangler.
It does, there is a section here, 4.7, it says councillors must uphold and accurately represent the policies and decisions of the council's governing body, but may explain why they voted on a matter in the way they did.
And Madam Chair, that's what I was going to explain. So the council may make a decision on a particular matter where you voted against it. What you should do, what this requires you to do, is say the council made this decision, which is X, Y, and Z. Be very clear. Don't try and change that or provide a slightly different version of the council resolution. And it's okay to have an alternate view, but the view should be expressed. And I voted against this as a councillor because I felt X, Y, and Z. That's actually quite legitimate. But to suggest the council's decision was crazy or the other councillors made a really bad decision, that's where you get across, that's where you've crossed the line. But saying you didn't agree and you voted against it for these reasons is completely legitimate. Just as the day after a council resolution, councillors might put rescission motions in. So that's absolutely saying you didn't agree with the decision. And there is a process to enable that to be reconsidered. So as my experience over many years has shown, council often come back and undo a decision they've made. So people must have disagreed with it. So it's okay to disagree. It's just how you go about it.
Councillor Marnie, the question.
Madam Chair, so there's still scope to possibly change this model supplied by the OLG if it goes to full council meeting?
What was the question? Is there still scope to change it?
Yeah, if it goes to full council meeting.
To the council officer, I think you said there's some options to make some minor modifications. Is that correct? Or
For you, Madam Chair, I believe she said that we have to adopt the model as it is, but we can either make some advancements to it or clarify minor amendments, but it has to be taken as is. But in terms of the time, I'll just refer that to Coordinator Communications.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. I would still be open if there is something to be changed. So we had that opportunity after the briefing to see if there was anything that would be minor changes. Obviously, it's important for us to have this policy to protect all staff and council and to give us the framework. So I would be open to hearing what it is that I could discuss with the executive, but I really would like to have some feedback on what that is, what the changes are.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify, if the councillors could come back to us with the types of modifications they would like to consider, there may be a way that can be included. But if it's a mandatory requirement, might have to deal with it by a process or a procedure document or a note that explains something a bit better. We could do some of that, but we'd need to know what it is, and it would be difficult for it just to be suggested from the floor of council at the council meeting if people could give that information to us beforehand so we can have a chance to have a look at it and see if there are some solutions to that concern. That would give us some time to provide a considered response for the councillor's benefit.
does that answer your question, Councillor Marnie?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the fact we're given a couple of weeks to review the policy, and but I'm just wondering if, possibly for further changes, in which case it should go to full council meeting, and maybe between now and then councillors can be reminded to maybe review it and see what they can come up with within a couple of weeks. Is that?
Yeah, the next week or so, if the councillors could send to us, directly to the Coordinator of Comms and Engagement or myself, any of those suggested changes, we can then have a look at it and see if it's possible. And we can also, which may require us to speak to the Office of Local Government, for example.
So, Councillor Marnie, are you suggesting we defer this off to the full council meeting?
Yes, please.
You want to move that?
I want to ask another
Oh,
question.
you've got another question, Councillor Simon?
Yeah,
Sorry.
through you, Madam Chair, to the Acting General Manager. So when the policy is adopted, social media policy, and we disclose all the platforms that we're on, like Instagram, Facebook, if it becomes known that a councillor is using another persona to troll other councillors' sites, what is the, what happens with that?
I don't recall reading anything in the social media policy on that specifically, but the coordinator of comms and engagement may be able to have a better answer than I have.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, that is where it becomes a code of conduct matter. So this actually gives a very clear framework for when these behaviours are code of conduct matters. In terms of identifying when that occurs, that I think still remains challenging, but the fact that there will be a disclosure step of what channels you are moderating for either for yourself or for someone else, then that'll make it a little bit clearer, the requirement to disclose.
We'll have more than we had before, I think, yeah.
Yeah, but also think of the case of someone using a persona to troll someone on another site, like a false. That's not them. That's them. They don't own that site. They're pretending to be someone and adding to the site. I think that's a really good reason for blocking them. And I'm not sure how we would then deal with a complaint if someone was complaining about being blocked, if they were hiding. If I've been blocked because I was a troll, I'm just going to go and.
Just a question, a clarification more than anything else, to Ms. James. What's hiding? Where a person uploads content onto a social media platform. See, I'm not very good at the technology of this. What do you do when you hide? I mean, you know, what's this all about? Please explain.
Through you, Madam Chair. It's actually a very good question. Hiding is what gives you the capacity. So we don't delete on council's channels, we hide. And hiding is where you have the ability to take down a comment, or literally hide it, so that the other members of the public don't see it, but it remains there for that person. So that person can see that their comment is still up on their own platform and when they look at it, but what you do is you are short-circuiting that being seen by anybody else. So it's still there, but you're not publishing it further.
So, and we, in managing our social media platforms, often use that technique rather than deleting the post sometimes when it's inappropriate, and sometimes it's simply not relevant to the post that the council has put on Facebook, and someone's on the site asking us about something that has nothing to do with that. We will simply hide that so no one else can see that. We can still see it, and the person who posted it can still see it, and we can reply to them effectively offline, but we don't actually delete. We probably hide far more than we probably don't delete very much at all. We certainly hide a bit.
In terms of the procedures that you mentioned around this policy, do we need to adopt the policy first in order for the procedures to be developed, or can the two items, the policy and the procedures, be reviewed together?
Madam Chair, I was going to get the policy adopted first and find out what the areas were. We have been working, I've been meeting with the other managers and directors that are largely impacted by this, because there is a significant implementation step for council. I've contacted Office of Local Government because we would like the issue about procedures and adopting this is happening across other councils. So for there to be formal training from OLG, given it's their model policy, would be the ideal position. But we will need training and induction and procedures, and we will need implementation steps within council ourselves, because we have a number of platforms. The library has its own platform, the museum and gallery has its own platforms. So there's significant implementation steps. I was going for adoption and then implementation based on what it is we need and what we are hearing from my internal consultations with the directors and managers, and what I'm hearing from councillors that they will need for this to be able to be complied with.
And I guess on that basis, there'd be some grace period once these policies implemented before, you know, you got a code of conduct on you for blocking someone without explaining it or something like that. That's my concern, is once you adopt it, are we then meant to be adhering to it immediately, or is there a grace period before we have that training?
Madam Chair, when we did the briefing, I suggested that we would probably need a 6-month implementation. So, because right now, councils won't be compliant and councillors won't be compliant, because we will have to have procedures about the record keeping, cheat sheets on how to do it most efficiently. And also the meetings that I've been having are, how can we not create additional procedures or steps or platforms, but instead embed this into current things like current disclosures and current inductions for staff and councillors. We're going to try to bring it in as smoothly as possible. I would suggest a 6-month grace period.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Acting General Manager.
So I was going to suggest that might be ultimately the resolution the council wishes to consider when the matter comes to council to adopt it. But they'll come into effect within 5 to 6 months, depending on the development of appropriate policies. I think there's some principles here that are really good that we'd all like to see, and this would be a good way to get started. But if we say that it's fully not implemented until the procedures and the training's been offered, that may be a path forward for the councillors.
Okay, thank you. All right, councillors, any other questions or discussions on this? Otherwise, we'll call for a motion. Councillor Marnie, you wanted to call to defer the report to the full council?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll second that.
And you'll second that? Okay, so the motion is to defer consideration of the new social media policy to the full council meeting on the 31st of October. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? We'll declare that carried. Thank you. Okay, we come to the last item on the business, which is FIN 050-22. It's a property matter, release of easement for drainage at 280 to 298 Railway Parade, Carlton. Now, there was a confidential paper with this item, and if we have any questions around that, we'll need to go into confidential, but if we are happy to just move the recommendation without any discussion, then we can deal with that now. So I'll just ask councillors if anyone has anything they wish to discuss. No? Okay, well, I'll call for a mover and a seconder on the motion as per the recommendation in the paper.
Oh.
Councillor Marnie will move it. Yep.
Seconded.
Councillor Catras will second it. All those in favour say aye.
Yeah.
All those against? Declare that carried. And there being no other item of business on the agenda, I declare the meeting closed at 6:39 p.m. Thank you, councillors and staff.